Hi everybody, I'm Tabitha and it's time to drop the reviews for April's books. So if you're new to reviews on this channel, the way it works is I'm about to drop the reviews for 5 books that were either review requests that I promised to review or advanced reader copies. I know some of you may be here specifically for one book, like maybe you wrote it. So if that's you, there are timestamps in the description that'll let you jump right to the book you're looking for. But the rest of you, stick around and watch the whole thing because there are some really good ones coming up. Ready? Let's go! First up for the month of April is Stonebearer's Betrayal by Jodi Milner. This is a young adult age category fantasy novel. It was published in 2020 by Stone Orchid Press, and it is 298 pages. I was actually sent a copy of this book by the author in exchange for this honest review. Your synopsis. When an innocent hunting trip turns into an attack, Kaito will be forced to face a reality she's not ready for. Her parents are actually legendary Stonebearers, immortal, powerful beings tasked with protecting the human race. When Katira is then captured by a terrifying archdemoness, her world will be further shattered. This enemy seeks to use Katira as bait to bring down not only her family, but the entire Stonebearer society. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I didn't like about this one is some of the women in this one were weak, and I really don't like that in a story. It seems like an odd thing to say because this cast is loaded with females, and it's a fantasy action novel, so it seems like it would make sense to have strong women. I mean, these are women with magical abilities and healing abilities and all kinds of things. But the story seems to somehow highlight the strong male characters, the male counterparts to these females, almost making all the females feel like sidekicks, which was kind of unfortunate. I wanted to see them step up. Maybe in a sequel they do. The second thing I can say I don't really like about this one is that I felt like the love interest was forced. I didn't really love Katira's options for like falling in love, and in a YA fantasy novel, we often have that romance side story. And this one just felt like it wasn't really a story about her necessarily, so the side arc felt a little forced and just unrealistic. I feel like the only girl in a small town falling for the only kid her age in the same small town, I don't know, give the poor girl some options. Third thing I can say that I didn't particularly like about this one is that this whole Katira versus Jaren thing. Katira is pretty clearly listed as the main character for the story. She comes up in the synopsis, but she is not the main character. Honestly, she's the reason why this book gets a YA label, but I feel like this is really Jaren's story. He's the love story that works. He's the magic story that works. He's the character you want to sort of relate to. I think that makes this difficult to classify because it changes the age range and it changes a lot of the synopsis. So that's unfortunate. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing I could say I liked about this one is that it was surprising in a good way. I love to be surprised by stories. Even when I read as much as I do, when a story jumps out of the genre and surprises me with a twist, I really like that. This one went in directions that I didn't see coming, and I sort of enjoyed that ride. Second thing I could say I liked about this one is the romance between the parents. I was not expecting that. If you don't know why, go back to the last thing I said I didn't like. I wasn't expecting to find the parents working. I wasn't expecting the romance side arc that made sense to be the parents. Typically in a YA fantasy, it is the young adult main character who's having that romance side arc. But these two were an epic love story, and I adored them. Third thing I can say I liked about this one is the magic system itself. It's incredibly complex. We feel like we're not masters of it after one book. I love that it's glyph-based. I love that it has consequences and it drains energy from the users. It's just a well-written magic system that drew me in, and it's definitely going to make me interested in looking for the second book. Who do I think should read this one? If you're a fantasy fan who enjoys complex magic systems, I think you're going to like this one. I also want to say that if you like the coming of age angle in YA fantasy, but you also enjoy couples that are like relationship goals, I really think you're going to love this one. Because like I said, the parents are the romance angle that just dominates this story. My rating? I gave this one 4 stars. Honestly, the complexities of the magic system make this a fantasy story that fantasy fans are going to absolutely love. So 4 stars for the Stonebearer's Betrayal by Jodi Milner. Next up for the month of April is Chimera, an anthology. This is edited by Ashley Hutchinson. It's coming to you from Lost Boys Press in 2021. It's an adult age category horror novel, but it's short stories, and it is 195 pages. I was given an electronic review copy by the publisher for this one in exchange for this honest review. Your synopsis: a unique horror anthology blending mythical monsters into short stories that may just keep you up at night. Sometimes you just have to let the monsters out. So what didn't I like about this one? So there were a few spots where the short story in the anthology ended in a weird spot. I mean, literally mid-sentence. Actually once I think it was mid-word. Whatever. I think that can work. It's a cool tool, and the first time it was used, I was like, okay, that was cool. That was a cool tool to make it seem like, we chomped off that story. That was neat. But the second time, it immediately felt overused. Second thing I can say I didn't particularly like about this one is that, as always with short stories, right, you have your favorites in the anthology, and then for some of them, you wish they'd gone on a little longer or you want a little more. This anthology is no different at all. There are at least 2 stories in this collection that I wanted more from. I didn't feel like I got enough out of them in this anthology, and I just wanted them to keep going. But then there were others, I would have read a whole book on these just because I was totally sucked into this world. Third thing I can say I didn't particularly love about this one is there's exactly one story in this anthology, and I don't know that I didn't like this. It's more of a warning. There's one story that features regional dialect. I'm not a huge fan of that. It makes it a little hard to read, but some of you don't care. So if, like me, it makes it a little hard for you to read it, you're not a big fan of that, just consider yourself warned. But again, I promise it's only one story, so not that big of a deal. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing is the foreword. Okay, that's a really weird thing to mention, but seriously, in an anthology, the foreword can be really important. In this case, it explains what all these stories bring to the table, why they're all coming together, and the theme for this entire anthology. And it really just tied it together and made this whole thing incredibly strong. So, don't skip that part. Second thing I could say I liked about this one is that all those monsters that if you watch a lot of horror movies, you might feel like you're an expert on, they're here in a different way. I love the creative way these authors explored creatures we've heard of in new and refreshing ways. I mean, I will never look at dragons the same way after this anthology. I'm just saying. Third thing I can say I liked about this one is that monsters you definitely haven't heard of, no matter how much you've watched horror or read horror, are highlighted in amazing and terrifying ways in this anthology. I'm relatively certain I had never in my life heard of a cat Sith before reading this book, and yet now I have a clear picture of that nightmare. So thanks, I guess. The last thing I can say I liked about this is that they are not all predictable stories. I think sometimes the danger with a mythical creature story is that they fall to those tales that you've heard before. You expect, for example, like a leprechaun to want to guard his gold or whatever. These stories definitely don't follow conventional lines, and honestly, that's my favorite part about it. Who do I think should read this one? If you like monster stories, go get this one because you will not be disappointed, and it's probably going to give you nightmares. I would also say that if you like short horror, this is going to be your new favorite. Friends, this is slightly niche, but I think I'm going to shock you with the rating. So, you ready? My rating? I gave this one 4 stars, and normally for niche books I do 3. But the deal is with this book, it knows exactly what genre it is. It knows exactly who its target audience is. And so I think for that, because it pulls no punches, knowing exactly who it's written for, it's really pulling out ahead of everything else like it. Really, this is like top of its class for short horror, and I really think it's worth a read if that's the kind of stuff you like to read. So 4 stars for Chimera, an anthology from Lost Boys Press. Next up for April, The Tech by Mark Ravin. This is an adult age category science fiction, although it does have thriller vibes. It's from Dawn Hill Publications in 2020, and it is 463 pages. And this was an electronic review copy I was sent by the author in exchange for this honest review. Your synopsis. Alexandra has just taken charge of the FBI field office in Arizona. Her motley crew of a team is already on a case when she arrives. They work well together and start wrapping up cases quickly. But the cases may be connected in ways they never expected and may put the crew in more danger than they imagined. So what didn't I like about this one? The first thing I could say I didn't like, and this is sort of a personal preference thing, there are really, really long chapters in this particular book. There are some breaks in them because you're jumping focus between characters. So you might have, a page on one character, and in the same chapter, we're going to switch. And so there's a break. But really, it's just difficult to pace yourself appropriately when a chapter is as long as it is. It didn't really affect my rating, but I did find myself getting annoyed with it. So I had to sort of check that to keep going. So just keep that in mind. Second thing I can say I didn't like about this one, I don't understand the reasoning behind keeping the technology a secret. This is amazing technology. That should be the highlight of this book. I feel like keeping it a secret made it feel like dirty, like questionable, like they were doing something wrong. And it gave the entire book this odd feeling of like anticipation. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop that never really paid off, in my opinion. Third thing I can say I didn't like about this one is that the action scenes feel rushed. Rushed is like the best word I can think of, and I tried to think of a better word. They just kind of feel rushed. I think it feels like we slowed down the research. So then even though the action scenes moved at normal pace, they felt rushed because the research was slow. I don't know. It just gave the book an odd pacing. Last thing I can say, and this is, again, probably a personal thing. One big factual error, I'd call it a glaring factual error, pulled me straight out of the book. And I don't want to say ruined it for me, but definitely caused me to doubt a lot of things. Do you know if that's ever happened to you? Like you find one thing, you're like, oh my God, that's not right. And you get hung up on it. So that happened. So I will say that if you aren't a tech person yourself, or if you're not, married to one, you probably wouldn't notice, but it's always a bummer when something like that in a story is factually inaccurate. Let's just lump in all the typographical errors and grammatical errors in here too. Like instead of DR period for doctor, it was a typographical error that it kept being DRY. Very confusing. So let's just lump that in. There were errors that took me out of the book. Okay, one last thing. I said I was done and I wasn't. One last thing I didn't like, flat characters. I didn't really connect to anyone, unfortunately, and they felt a little flat. It's just my opinion. So what did I like about this one? Look, the premise is amazing. I want to be really clear about that here because I don't say that lightly. The technology idea is really important. It has merit. It was really cool. It's original. It's not something I feel like other people are doing. And all the scenes that involved that technology were the best scenes in the book. They were well written and really cool. I do want to say another thing that I really, really liked is that I love when tropes are played around with. So this one features a renegade FBI guy, right? That renegade FBI character who's not going to follow the rules and they're doing it because it's the right thing to do, even if it's not the right way to do it. You know, that trope, right? Well, the twist is that character is an IT guy. That was cool. I loved seeing that twisted. I loved seeing that played around with. It was just not what I was expecting from the trope. I just thought that was really neat. I just like when tropes get played with. So that was my favorite part. Who do I think should read this one? Look, plenty of action fans on sites that review are giving this one rave reviews. So obviously action fans are going to love it. I think I went into it with my expectations about the technology being too high. The title may have been part of the problem. And I came out disappointed because I was looking for more tech. I will say if you regularly read FBI or detective stories and you want something different, this may work for you. It felt different. That technology being added in may give you some variety. I also want to say that I have seen a lot of people talk about how this would make a great TV show. I think that's because, again, that premise was solid and you would allow the actors to sort of play out and puff up the characters, if that makes sense. Anyway, my rating. I have to be honest, I pride myself on giving honest reviews around here, even when it's difficult to do. I have to give this one 2 stars the way it was written. I think the premise by itself should have been a lot higher, but the book, the way it was written, needed tightening and editing to help fix some big problematic elements that I thought it suffered from. So I'm going 2 stars for The Tech by Mark Ravin. The next book for the month of April is actually also my April read of the month. That means, in my opinion, it was the most exciting and interesting book that I finished this month. So that book is Scars of Cereba by Rachel Emma Shaw. It's a young adult age category fantasy novel. It was 315 pages, and it's coming to you in May of 2021. It is independently published. This is actually the second book in the memory duology. I previously rated the first book, Last Memoria, also 5 stars. Your synopsis: Balin's mind is broken. When Cereba returned his memories, she fractured the man he was before his memories were stolen and the man he became. Now he's fighting to rejoin his two halves, a task made all the more difficult by the memory thief who's also now residing in his mind. It's up to Felon to find a way out of this mess, which would be a lot easier if the 3 people in his head would just agree on how to do that. So what didn't I like about this one? If I'm being picky, which honestly is what you want me to be, right? I'd say there are a few times where you're confused for just a little bit, like a line or a paragraph, about which character you are in the moment. I will say I think that's the point. I will say it lends to the confusion and helps you understand the character's battle, right? Internal struggle. But I have to mention it. Second thing I can say I didn't love is that I encountered 3 grammatical errors. Maybe it wasn't a lot, but I will say I'm working from an advanced reader copy. This book doesn't come out. It comes out in May, this month. So I don't know. They could have been fixed in the final publication. What did I like about this one? The first thing I liked, loved, is my favorite. You all know this. Morally gray characters. Just like in the first book, you can expect lots of characters who aren't obviously villains or heroes. They have you questioning which side they fall on. They're morally gray, and I absolutely love them. I love that they pop off the page and they feel real. I love that they struggle with their choices and which side of that villain-hero line they even want to fall on. Second thing I could say I liked about this one is it had an incredibly emotional ending, even more than I was expecting. I won't say more, spoilers, but the ending definitely tugs at your heartstrings and makes you feel things, and I love that. Third thing I could say I liked about this one is it has big themes, and that's another one of those things that I just love, especially in young adult books. Again, this one is exploring some big concepts. This time we are dealing with whether you think your life is worth more than the life of another. We're dealing with if major events in your life can literally reshape who you are. We're dealing with if you are you without your memories. It's just brilliant. The big themes and the big questions in this book are brilliant, and it just makes you look at your own life differently, and that, in my opinion, is the best kind of book. Who do I think should read this one? If you are a fantasy fan, just like the first book, I really think this is going to appeal to you. It has a beautifully created world that's an incredibly interesting concept. The world is rooted in our world, but it goes so much deeper. It's just really, really cool. I mean, we're dealing with people who can mess with and pull and alter memories, and that's really kind of neat. Fantastic concept for sure. Second kind of reader I think is going to like it are science fiction fans. Hear me out. Science fiction normally explores the realm just outside of what is truly possible. I kind of think this one does that. I think there's no real technology involved, so it's tough to call it science fiction. But I do think if you like when books go just outside of what's really possible with what we can do, you're going to like this book. In fact, you'll like Last Memoria and this book. My rating? I mean, I already kind of hinted at it, but I gave this one 5 stars. Really, this is the perfect ending for these characters. The story is going to appeal to fantasy and sci-fi readers. I mean, if you like to operate outside of the realm of possibility, you are going to adore this book. So 5 stars for Scars of Cereba by Rachel Emma Shaw. Last for April, but certainly not least, A Soul Fractured by Shayna Grissom. This is a young adult age category fantasy novel. It was published in 2021 by Sans Press, and it is 316 pages. This is the sequel to A Soul Reclaimed, which I previously rated 4 stars. Your synopsis. Nora has ascended the throne as the Queen of Hell, but the magic that should follow the soul of the king seems to be choosing which moments to come to her. With all of Hell questioning her, can Nora step up and prove she's the queen they need? So what didn't I like about this one? The first thing I can say I didn't like is I wanted just a little bit more from the ending. Just a little. I pride myself on not spoiling endings around here, so I can't say more than that. But I would have loved to see it go just one step further, which, now that I'm saying it, makes me think maybe this will be a trilogy someday. Maybe. Anyway, second thing I can say I didn't particularly like, there were a few typos. Not a lot, but a few. Worth mentioning if you're pickier about that than I am. Last thing I wasn't crazy about is there were some hiccups, I'll call them, in the descriptions. So what I mean by that is somehow something went wrong when the publisher put this one on Amazon and Goodreads. And when you click on it, the description is actually the description of the first book. So it's got the title of the second, but the description of the first. I promise you they are different. I have now read both, but it obviously caused some confusion, and hopefully the publisher can straighten that out soon. So what did I like about this one? First thing I can say I liked is, oh my gosh, part 2. This book split into a part 1 and a part 2. And I was skeptical. I turned the page, I was skeptical. I didn't think I was going to like it. But oh my goodness. Shayna Grissom's talent comes through in part 2. Her voice comes through. Her figurative language and her descriptive prowess, whatever, I hate that word. Anyway, they come through in part 2. She really just put all of her talent into that part. I was shocked. I mean, the first part's good. The second part is mind-blowing. Really well done. Second thing I can say I liked about this one is Aegis. And I remember adoring him in the first book, and he's still absolutely amazing. In fact, I think I like him better. He's consistent, which is cool. He's strong. He's dedicated. He is my absolute favorite character from this series, and I didn't know that I was going to like him that much at the start of book 1. So if you're starting book 1 now and you're not sure how you feel about Aegis, stick with him. He's my favorite. Last thing I can say I liked about this one is the world building. I mean, just like it was in the first book, the development of hell itself as a setting for a book was awesome. Just awesome. I feel like we got even more answers this time around to how the world works and how that happens. It makes the world feel deeper. It makes the story feel deeper. It makes you more connected and immersed in this story. I just loved it. It was really cool. You can tell the author has done some research on what other people have written hell like. There were shades of research on other stories and other books that have been set there, but yet it has a twist and a mind of its own that was really neat. Who do I think should read this one? If you're a fan of the first one, obviously go get this one. It doesn't disappoint. But I also want to say, if you like the idea of a story set in hell, start with Soul Awakened and give this series a read, because really these 2 books are wonderful, and the twist on how she writes about hell is honestly the best part of this whole book. Last thing I want to say, if you should read this, is if you are a fantasy fan who likes reluctant hero tropes, but you want them to twist in a way I promise you have never seen before, go get this book. So we all know I'm a reluctant hero fan. This was amazing. The twist was awesome. My rating, I gave this one 4 stars. Fantasy fans, this one is amazing. I'm not kidding. It is worth a read. Go get them. A Soul Reclaimed and A Soul Fractured. You're going to love them. 4 stars for A Soul Fractured by Shayna Grissom. Okay, my friends, that is it for me and those required books, we're calling them, that I read in April. In the description, I'm also going to put a link to the blog post that's going to take you to the other books that I read in April. So in the past, I've done sort of fast reviews here on the YouTube channel, but obviously I'm posting these just a tad bit behind where I normally would. So to speed things up, those reviews are on Goodreads and Amazon, and the blog will help tie it all together and help you find it. So that link is in the description. I don't want to leave any books out, but honestly, most of those were traditionally published, and many of you have probably already read them. Doesn't mean they're not good, doesn't mean they're not worth your time. It's just a little different than these ones I wanted to make sure you heard about. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye.